Yeah, so I was born in Northern Ireland, and then when I was 8, my family moved to Yorkshire, Barnsley. So the first thing that they did was they enlisted me in a kind of like performing arts place that gave you free brass instruments. So I had a lot of influences from my mum and dad, and my dad plays folk guitar and sings. And I played the violin and would play fiddle and tin whistle with him. But when we moved to Yorkshire, I got into playing brass bands. So I would play, first of all, cornet, and then I moved on to trombone. And every week would be rehearsals and then competitions at the weekend. And then you move up into the ranks of the different levels of brass band playing.
You were pretty full on at an early age.
At an early age. And also then in school, it was a really amazing school because they had a great drama department, but the music department was wonderful, and we would go on trips, and like we went to the Ukraine and Germany and places with the school band. So all my friends were all the musicians. So, and we all had bands together and you know, played in pubs and told people we were 18 when we were like 14 so that we could go and play and do covers. So we played like things like songs by the Police and loads of things that were out at the time. But yeah.
Oh, fantastic. And then how did you, so how many instruments do you play then?
Well, probably like 4, I don't like different skills kind of one. So violin, trombone, I sing, and keys, like piano and synths.
Oh, wow. And you still make use of all of these instruments within your compositions and writings nowadays?
Yeah.
That's amazing. And then how did you move from your more traditional background to the electronic side of music?
So I was making my very first album. So I'd done a lot of work for theatre when I lived in Liverpool. I went to university there, and I worked quite a lot as an MD and arranging things and doing short films for a lot of local filmmakers. And I was offered to come to London and do some music of my own in a studio. And I'd never really written my own music. So it was quite a big kind of learning curve. So I came to London and I worked with a producer called Mike Lindsay, who used to be in a band called Tongue. And we made this record. And as we were making the record in the studio in Shoreditch, this gentleman, older guy, kept walking through the studio to go to the toilet. And every time he would walk through, he would like say hi and smile and then pass on by. And then this kept happening. And eventually I learned that was John Fox from Ultravox, and obviously his own amazing solo work. And not long after that, he got in touch, and his other band member, Benj, who he was working with, and said, oh, we need a violin player and someone who can do keys, synth work. And I'd only really played a little bit on synths, but they wanted me to kind of play synths and sing and violin all at the same time. And I was like, okay, well, I'll do it. So we went on tour for a couple of years, and I basically learnt everything I know now from those days of learning all the different synths and listening to the music and working with Benj, who's an incredible synth collector and modular synths, and obviously John with his amazing knowledge as well. So that's just hooked me, and ever since then I now have the worst car you could possibly think of because I spent all my money on synthesizers.
Amazing. So it kind of forced you to learn all these synths in a very short amount of time, how to go about the gear that you had at hand.
And how to adapt.
How to adapt so quickly, but I guess from that newfound love that kind of just exploded. And
I think, I suppose a lot of people would think, oh, what's the combination of, a traditional background with an electronic one? But it's so obvious because it's everything's integrated. But also what I love about analog synths is that you can touch and manipulate and feel, and you get that with holding a violin in your hand. It's the same feeling of like you are the manipulator, you are the one in control, and I love that about synths. But what I love about synthesizers is that they have these nuances, and sometimes they're half broken, and sometimes that works in your favor, and you get these incredible sounds that you wouldn't normally achieve, or maybe you won't get it again. And so there's something about them and the feel of what comes from the electronic kind of the waves that really shows me and really lets me kind of express what I feel inside my mind in no other way that I can explain possible.
Yeah, and I feel that sometimes often also comes with a sense of surprise, perhaps, when you play around with modular synthesis and something you just can't describe or to anybody else how you.
Yeah, and it opens up a world of possibilities, and I like the challenge of finding the sounds as well. I think that's, you know what you want in your head, and trying to make something do it is really good challenge, and just keeps your brain alive the whole time and makes it exciting. So.
Yeah. So do you have a music rig at the moment, or a permanent setup where you write all your music, and what could we find in there?
So at the moment, so ironically, I'm still in the studio where I first recorded, and now we have a couple of different producers in there as well. But the setup is we've got like a Juno 60 and a Jupiter 4 and a Mini Moog from the 60s, and I've got a Wasp that I really, really love at the moment. And there's always an upright piano, because it's just so nice to be able to play a real piano. We've got quite a few tape machines and 2 space echoes actually, and quite a lot of drum machines as well. There's one that's an Italian one that I really love at the moment called an Elka 1.
All right.
And they get lots of different alternative beats off that. It's good fun.
A real toy room.
Yeah.
Ah, amazing. So for the piece that you'll be recording today, from your album from 2016, Awake But Always Dreaming, that track, you're doing a completely different take on this, it seems, so because you're doing a quintet. So you have like a flute, oboe, clarinet, bassoon, and French horn, I think. Which is completely different to the track on your album. How did that come about, and what was the process of like translating it from? Yeah,
so I think the album itself is very electronic, but I always write in the sense that you start from a bass anyway. So I start from the piano, and if it works on the piano, then it generally works in any kind of form. So for me, so actually, this is a music box, and I use this quite a lot for doing kind of alternative versions of covers, like 80s songs and things. And so I decided to make a cover version of this particular song, Standing on the Roof of the World, but just for music box. And kind of what you get with that is this kind of real kind of alternative way of hearing the notes come through. So on the original version, it's kind of a wash with all these different soundscapes, and because the record itself is a lot about memory and musical memory and what we're left with when our memory goes, the music box kind of brings out that kind of old past, like the crankiness and stuff. So you really get that sense of something, I suppose, nostalgia, really. Yeah. But the woodwind, I used a lot of woodwind on the record. There's bass clarinet and oboe, and I really find that it's an interesting combination between the synthesizers and low-end kind of woodwind. So for today, I thought it would be really exciting to try the music box with woodwind, because I haven't done that before.
And you've got an input here as well in the...
Yeah, so you can jack it up. So it's got a contact mic that's placed inside here on the wood. So it really picks up the scratchiness of the sound.
Oh, amazing. So, and also you said you entered the music, the film and TV music world. In what context, or how did you...
So when I first started this, I made I made a cover version of Tainted Love and did that on the music box just because a bit of kind of tongue-in-cheek, a bit of fun. And I thought that it would, what is really interesting about the music box, it works really well with a strong kind of riff that kind of holds it together. And obviously Tainted Love, as soon as you hear the first few notes, you know exactly what it is.
Yeah.
And so I made that and it went, you know, I really loved playing it. And then I decided to make an EP of covers from the 80s. So there's Blue Monday, Sugar Hiccup by Cocteau Twins and Electricity OMD. And did it as a little EP, sent it to a few people, and somebody picked it up and said, oh, we want to use this for some TV things. It was perfect. And so for about a year, I kept getting offers, sync work of the music box. And then people were asking, oh, can you do another cover on the music box of this and this? And so that kind of opened a door into a world that, because I'd done theatre and a few short films, it was nice to be able to step into a world with a unique sound rather than, I suppose, kind of trying to find it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, because you've got quite a
something original
niche thing going with that. And
yeah.
So what are the plans in the coming year?
So I'm currently writing the music for a theatre play, actually, that based on Graham Greene's 1930s novel Brighton Rock. So that opens in York on the 15th, and it has live music for the show, and then it tours around the UK until June. So yeah, it's very kind of, I've managed to get them to use music that is very electronic based, but I suppose the world that I'm trying to paint is very much like a Twin Peaks type world with the music. So there's a lot of kind of classical edge to the synthesizers and things, which is really nice. I'm arranging the strings for Paul Weller's new album that's out later this year. So that's
amazing.
happening in the next few weeks, the session, and yeah, lots of things like that.
That's lined up.
Yeah.
Amazing. So combining the your electronic side with the brass band, how did you go about that?
Yeah, so it was really interesting because I was on tour with East India Youth, electronic artist, and we had a day off and I took him to the Whit Friday marches, which are this big brass band kind of celebration in Saddleworth, which is outside Manchester. And he'd never seen any brass bands before. But anyway, I took a picture and said, oh, electronic meets brass bands. And somebody got in touch and said, oh, would you like to write a piece of music for a brass band? So I had an idea about this character called Mary Cassio, and I wanted to take her to Cassiopeia, the star constellation. And so I presented the idea to them as a completely instrumental work, and they were really up for going to space. So I wrote everything on synths to start with, and then transcribed certain parts over to the brass band, and then worked with the conductor on the orchestration of it as well. But yeah, we've been touring with that. It came out in September, and we've been touring with that last year and going on into this year. So there's a show coming up in London, the next one, which is the 14th of April at the Queen Elizabeth Hall.
All right, need to make sure to
come.
Yeah. See that gig. How do you have a different approach to when you write for orchestral instruments or for electronic music? Do you have like a different approach how you go about it?
No, I don't know. I suppose
or a
not
starting
really.
point of when you start with electronic music first and then integrate the...
Yeah, I find starting with the electronic is better. What was really important actually for the Mary Cassio album was that you didn't get a sense that here is a brass band and here is the synths and they sit far apart from each other. The whole point of it was to try and amalgamate it so that it sounded like something completely new, or that at times you didn't quite know if you were hearing a cornet play the high note or whether it was a synth. And so finding the right kind of textures to work across was really important. But I think for me, because of my background anyway, I think I wrote the piece of music in mind, where I used the synths and the electronic music that I knew would work with the timbres of the brass. And, you know, the things that are missing, you know, the kind of the higher frequencies and the real so beautiful kind of power where the brass band don't stretch to is kind of covered by the synthesizers. So then you get this massive sound. And that for me was the most exciting way of going about that composition, was looking at what's missing and what I can add and emphasize.
Yeah, really interesting. So you also entered the film and TV music scene. In what context is it, or how did you get there?
So back in 2014, I did the music for a show called Dates, or the title music, and the end of every episode was different variation of the title music. So we worked a lot with the directors in order to kind of get the right feel going out of the show. But the same director of that show has just done a new one called Kiss Me First that airs in March on Netflix. And so he got in touch and said, would you like to do some scoring for this show and write another kind of title song for the show as well? And it's a really magical show in that it's half kind of VR and half real, but also the music is just like a blast from everywhere. So all his reference points were just completely like just broad spectrum stuff. So and it obviously had to be very quick. So I worked with another producer called Erlen Cooper, and we used actually a lot of Spitfire and things to get the orchestral scenes, and then on the electronic scenes we could use our own gear as well, and a lot of the voice, and then the song, the title song as well.
Well, I'm really looking forward to the recording now.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.